about the reach of this fight and the interest, public interest in this fight. So, we have to finally, finish this off. There's no point doing the talking. Let's do the fighting. We're fighters. We've seen them approach me with 10 guys. So let's now see how it goes one-on-one.
I love it. I love that energy. I love the attitude. Let's go over to Zubaira for a second. As Artem said, Zubaira, we'll have Alex translating today. This is a long time in the making. This fight, everybody wants to see it. It's part of a huge card. How does it feel for you now that this fight's been made?
Зубайра, вопрос тебе. Как Артем уже сказал, этот бой уже давно нагревался, созревал. Наконец-таки вы на карде, ваш бой состоялся. Для тебя насколько этот бой является долгожданным?
Честно, вот просто спортивный интерес. Раз уже назначили, выйдем, подеремся. Наконец-то этот бой состоится. Интересно будет для зрителей, для публики. Многие ждут этого боя.
I think as well it's a long time coming. It's a very promising fight for public, for audience, for both of us. We have a little thing to settle, so I think it's going to be exciting for everybody involved.
It's always a good thing when there's something to settle, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? All right, we're going to open it up for questions now to all of you that are on the call. Tani will handle that and calling you guys one-on-one. We'll do questions for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So, Tani, if you want to get started with the media, please.
Thanks, Coach. Gabriel, please kick us off.
Thank you. This is Gabriel Gonzalez for Cage Side Press. A question for both Artem and Zubaira. Both of you haven't fought in a while. Can you just talk a little bit about the layoff and getting yourself back ready for a fight after some time away?
Зубайра, ты давно уже не выступал, у тебя перерывы были. Можешь вкратце описать, как у тебя лагерь проходит, как ты занимался, в какой ты сейчас форме?
Да, давно уже, почти 3 года я не дрался. Лагерь проходит в высшем уровне, если не лучше, точно не хуже, чем обычно подготовился. Я уверен, что лучше подготовка у меня. Я уверен в себе. И я уверен, что покажу хороший бой.
Yes, indeed. It's been 3 years since I was fighting last, and but I have a great camp right now. It's not any worse, not any better than before. I'm back on the track. We have full camp right now, and I'm looking forward to it.
And for Artem, can you talk a little bit about what's it been like to get yourself back ready for a fight after a long time?
Yeah, definitely it's been interesting, but to be honest with you, I've enjoyed the time off. I felt I needed it, as you know, towards the end of my career, I was doing bare knuckle, very intense sport, very demanding on the body, and demanding mentally as well. You're going into a blender, fists are flying, blood everywhere, it's a difficult, sport. So I felt I needed a little break. I was done with it. As you know, I was done with MMA, with fighting, with everything. I really, really needed the break. But after a while, it's fighting is something that's in my blood. I love fighting. I think when you watch my fights, you can tell that I love fighting. I don't have to say that to anybody. They can see it from the way my fights go. So, once I got a little break, I started feeling those feelings again, the adrenaline, that the wanting to feel that adrenaline again. And obviously this was a big fight that I had to have, we just absolutely had to put this fight together, we had to tick that box off. So it was incredible to go back into camp, get that camaraderie again. I missed all the boys, I did see them a little bit, obviously, in my time off, but not as much. Now I've been in camp again, going from training to training, seeing all the coaches again, seeing all the sparring partners again, all the training partners. Honestly, I've been really, really enjoying it. It's been great for my son to see me as well in a fight camp. He's never really seen me before in a fight camp. When I was fighting bare knuckle before, he was only a baby. So, that's also an important part for me, because obviously I always talk to my son about training, but now I get a chance to actually show him how it's done, show him what it's like to be in fight shape, show him what daddy can actually do. So yeah, I felt great, being back, and it's been a good camp, and I look forward to putting on a show as I always have done.
one final question for both of you. Obviously, the fight comes together because you two were part of a very big moment between, the rivalry with Habib and Conor McGregor. Now that it has been several years later, would you guys do anything different or wish things had happened differently now that it's been years removed since everything that happened and you were part of the story in the rivalry?
Зубайра, понятное дело, что ваша история с Артемом началась еще давно, когда был конфликт у Хабиба и Макгрегора. Спустя это время, смотря назад, ты бы хотел, чтобы как-то по-другому все сложилось, или в принципе как есть, так и есть? Это про ваши отношения с Артемом.
Никаких принципов нету, ничего такого подобия нету. То, что было ситуация в Нью-Йорке 6 лет назад, то, что это было, это давно закрытая история. Тут просто стоит спортивный интерес, и все, не более. Если было бы что-то, я, претензии, если у меня было бы кому-то, я столько не сидел бы дома.
I wouldn't say we are still at the same level of bad blood right now. It's been 6 years ago. I kind of let it already pass. If I would have bad feelings, we would definitely solve that within those 6 years. So for me right now, it's all pure sport.
And then for Artem as well, just your thoughts on everything?
Yeah, well, for me, like, how can it be over if we didn't get a chance to actually fight? Obviously there was a lot of things said, a lot of things happened, but I feel that the story wasn't over yet. We spoke a lot about it, and we have to finish it with a fight. That's what we do. We're fighters. Words don't mean as much as action do. So we have to get in there and fight. So for sure, to me, I feel the story is not over until we go into that cage and put the fight on. And then we get to see what's what. We've seen a lot of action from Zubaira when he was talking to me, telling me to say it to his own face, when there was 10 guys there. Well, now there's going to be one-on-one, and I'll finally get a chance to say it to his face, and he can say whatever he wants to my face too, and we finally get to close that chapter, the right way. That's the way it should be done. It shouldn't be just this is too big of a story to not have a fight at the end.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriel. Just so you guys know, if we could please keep it to 2 questions each so we can get, through the most people, that would be awesome. Jake.
Get my mic going. Hey guys, Artem, I'll start with you real quick, just because piggybacking off of what you just said there, with the fight being in the books after this one, do you guys shake hands afterwards? Will the dust be settled then?
Yeah, I think once we have a fight, that's it. After the fight, what else is there? The fight is the ultimate it's the pinnacle of an argument. You know what I mean? You can shout and scream, whatever, but once you have a fight, well, that's it. That's the way it happens, everywhere. You want to see Animal Kingdom, 2 lions fight. Once the fight is over, that's it. They go their separate ways. So to me as well, I just have to get this fight in. I want to see him one-on-one. I want to feel him in that cage. I want to see what he can do. I want to see, can he back up his words? I want to show that I can back up mine. And once it's finished there, then that's it. Then it's over. We shake hands and move on.
And last one for me, flipping it to Zubaira. You guys kind of gave different answers here in terms of, is the dust settled? Is the beef behind you guys? So hearing Artem's response there, do you then realize or think to yourself, okay, maybe this isn't over. Maybe I got to come into this with a little more bad blood, or is it still to you just a fight?
Зубайра, Артем немножко по-другому выразился. Он говорит, что та еще история не закончена у вас. Ультиматум будет провести бой, как везде в животном мире происходит. Если есть конфликт, то он заканчивается боем, и потом уже после боя можно руки потрясти, но бой должен обязательно состояться, и у вас еще не закрытый вопрос. Ты как на этот момент можешь ответить?
Если не закрытый вопрос, надо закрывать им. Он хочет в октагоне закрывать, тогда скоро бой состоится, закроет.
Yes, if that's something that has been unsettled yet, if it's still open topic, we definitely have to go to the octagon and close this question over there. I agree with that.
Sean Sheehan.
Hi, Sean Sheehan from Sherlock.com. Just two quick questions for Artem. Artem, first of all, how different of a fighter are you now from the last time you fought? Like, I know you've been with Richie Smullen and different people for years. How big is it working with guys like him, and how different of a fighter are you now to when the last time you fought?
Well, definitely Richie has helped me a lot in preparation for this camp. He's reached next level, of wrestling, grappling, striking, everything. He's the highest level fighter out there. I actually cannot wait to for the world to see what he can do in there. He's been showing a little bit, but it's a lot. We actually between ourselves, we kind of call him like he's like a Khabib. That's how good his wrestling, and control and fighting is right now. So for me to have him in this camp, preparing me for those wrestling exchanges, preparing me for that takedown defense, for those, get ups from the floor if I get taken down, it's been incredible. It's like having the highest level, fighter on a daily basis. So that definitely has helped me a lot. I wish I had Richie like this sooner, that Richie was that level sooner and he could really prep me and talk me through all the little details and all the technicalities of MMA, wrestling, and grappling. So I'm definitely a lot better prepared for that side of things, But in terms of my stand-up and everything, it's going to be as aggressive as ever. I'm going to come forward, hands down, swinging from the hip, looking to knock him out. That's never going to change.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, you mentioned in an interview that you were talking about going up to train with Paul Hughes and the lads above the north. Did you manage to do that? And if you did, how was it?
Yeah, to be honest, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get up there, just with camp and everything. It's been very intense. I had little, injuries here and there, nothing too serious, that kind of stopped me from training, but it had prevented me from, going up north because that's something you have to commit the whole day to. It's 2 hours up, training there, 2 hours back down. It's definitely a day where you can only do one session. So everything got in the way. I really wanted to get up there. Maybe in the future I will still do it. I know the boys have a great team up there and some very high level fighters. But unfortunately, at this time, I didn't get a chance to go up there.
Thanks, Artem. Thank you.
Damon Martin.
Two quick questions for Artem. Artem, I remember talking to you after you retired the first time, and a big part of that was your, not taking damage. You wanted to be around for your son. You want to be around for your family. Can I ask kind of like what changed? And is this like a one-time deal, or is this like one and see what happens? Like, are you back, or how are you looking at this?
Well, for now, just this fight. Obviously, you have to take it one fight at a time, especially when you're 39. Let's see how the body holds up. But in terms of taking damage and all that, yeah, of course, that is still always at play. However, if you look at Zubaira's fights, let's be honest, there's not that much damage being delivered. He's obviously got very specific style. It's effective. He's achieved some good things. With it, he got some good wins. With it, but it's not that dangerous. It's a takedown. He holds you down. He's got good control. But that's kind of the fight. So. For me, taking a fight like this, that's never. It can be frustrating to be in a fight like this, especially if you're unable to, get up and get something going. It can be very frustrating for sure. But in terms of dangerous, it's probably less dangerous than, well, certainly my bare knuckle fights, let's say, or some of the other fights that I was doing, even in the UFC. This is not a Cub Swanson fight, let's say. Cub Swanson, let's say you're going in, there's going to be 100 shots flying your way. It's going to be, very dangerous. You're going to be taking a lot of damage, Whereas with Zubaira, it's not a fight like this. You have to be very strategic in your approach, for sure. You have to be very technical. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of difficult situations to, get up and defend the takedowns. But in terms of actual damage, I don't think it's that risky, compared to some of the other fights that I have done in the past.
And Artem, I know that so much of the narrative of this fight started around the Conor and Khabib stuff, and I know your relationship with Conor has dramatically changed since then. I won't ask you any personal questions about that, but you are boots on the ground. Can I ask, what did you make of Conor running for president of Ireland and then dropping out? Because I think everyone's kind of reacted to that over the past day or so.
President running for president is something that we have spoken, all the way back. One of the reasons even for even arranging for me to arrange a meeting with Vladimir Putin, with President Putin for Conor, that all had those kind of, future aspirations, running for president, you want to establish some contacts, in the political world, and obviously Vladimir Putin, is one of the kind of main figures in politics, worldwide. So we always spoke about that. However, this time around, I support the decision to withdraw, because I don't think Conor is in the right space right now, not in the right mindset, to run for president. He has to get his ducks in a row first. We've seen him, he pulled out of even the press conference. Like, that's not Conor. I know Conor that showed up to fight for the interim belt with no legs. Both of his ligaments were torn in both of the knees. He was completely unable to walk and still showed up. That's the Conor I know, and that's the Conor that people believe would make a good president. And I agree that Conor for sure would make a great president and would address all the issues that need to be addressed right now in Ireland. However, I don't think he's in the right mind frame right now to run for president. There's a lot of things that he needs to fix before he can take on such an important role. So I see it as a good thing, him dropping out.
Thank you, Artem.
Thank you.
All right, last question for these guys. Mike Pendleton, please.
Start with Artem. Artem, what have you learned about yourself as a person? You talked a lot about, wanting your family, your children to see you and see you training and fighting. What have you learned about yourself as a person since 2018 when this whole thing started?
Not sure about learning something about me as a person, but yeah, there's some things you left with some regrets or whatever. But then actually, when I start to think about it, I realize, listen, no matter what happens in life, yeah, maybe you would like to change a certain moment and do something else, but you don't know, and that particular moment might be better, but you don't know where else that's going to take you then. You don't know how your life is going to turn out. So for me, if I was giving advice to myself in the past, where I would just say, listen, don't feel so bad for bad things that happen to you, and celebrate the victories a little bit more, but other than that, there's no point saying I'll change this or that or the other. Obviously in future I will approach certain things certain way. I've taken some serious lessons from those moments. However, I wouldn't change anything. It is what it is. I was in that situation because I had my brother's back. There's no other way I could have left those very serious words that Khabib was saying about Conor. Another very important fact is that Khabib was the first one that started, going at Conor like this. We always were friendly with Khabib. Anytime we saw each other at shows, always, went up, shook hands. Everything was very friendly. And then at one point he decided that, to promote himself, he wanted to go at Conor. And for me personally, there was no way I could just, let those words go and not address it and not say it when I'm being asked directly, even if it's in Russian, even if Conor would have never seen it, doesn't matter. I always have my brother's back no matter what. So in that sense, it is what it is. I feel with this whole fight, with this whole situation, there's definitely enough talking. It's time to just fight. Let's get in the cage and let's go.
Last question, just for both of you really quickly, if you can. Why did the PFL make the most sense to finally settle this rivalry? What was it about being a part of the PFL and on this card that made sense for both of you?
Зубара, почему ты решил принять этот бой? Почему ты решил с PFL подписаться и хочешь этот вопрос уже закрыть?
У меня, я просто хотел драться, соскучился боям, решил просто вернуться, подраться и просил этот бой в PFL. Общий бой просил, они мне предложили этого соперника, я согласился. Я именно определенного соперника не просил, я просто хотел драться и все.
As for me, it was most of all, I wanted to come back and have a fight. It's been a minute. So I asked PFL to give me a good fight, a worthy fight. It's not necessarily what's going to be with Artem originally. I just wanted any opponent. But obviously the way it played out, we have the situation, and I think it's a great fight.
Yeah, so for me personally, I wanted this exact fight. I started looking around because before I had received the video message from the president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, and he invited me over, and he was with Zubaira in the video and saying, look, come over to Chechnya. We're going to put on a good show here. I know they've got a big promotion, ACA. It's one of the leading promotions in Russia. So it's a very big promotion. They put on some big fights. So that was my initial reaction. I tried to reach out to them, but then I was told that Zubaira had signed with PFL. So then I reached out to PFL, and they were happy to make the fight. I mean, this is a massive fight, and from Zubaira's perspective, is definitely he has to be happy with how big this fight is, because if you look at his career, there hasn't been too many big fights for him. Whereas this fight will be watched worldwide. The whole world is watching. Russia, of course, and not just Russia. The whole world knows about this fight, and the whole world will be watching. So as a fighter, if he's coming back, and wants to build his career, I mean, those are the kind of fights you want to be involved in. There's no point fighting a fight where only two people are watching. You want to, when I fight, the world watches, and nowadays it's going to be me and Zubaira fight, and the world will be watching. So,